Week 1 of the NFL season has completed, and I'm going to tell you what I was right about and what I was wrong about. First, we're going to start what I was wrong about. And look, I was completely dead off on the Dolphins and Colts game. I flipped it. I thought the Dolphins would win by 20 25 points, and they would show levels to the Colts. I was dead wrong. This Dolphins team, it's a dead dolphin. They've gotten onto the land, and they're just flopping around. They're about to die. This team played with no heart, no energy, no innovation, and it just looks like this team's given up. Looks like Tyreek Hill's going to ask for a trade. Looks like Tua Tagovailoa is probably going to get injured soon, and the coach is going to go. This Dolphins team, I thought they'd be an average football team. They look like they're going to compete for the number one overall pick. In terms of the Colts, I had it flipped. I thought the Colts would be competing for a number one overall pick, and I thought this would be a dumpster fire of a team. And look, I was dead wrong. This offense, it looked efficient. It looked innovative. They were getting a lot of people involved. Daniel Jones, although I still think he's a bad quarterback, he played very well and has showed a vast improvement in this new offense. The Colts look like a sleeper team, an 8-9 win team that maybe can slip into the playoffs if they can keep this up. So I was dead wrong on both those teams, and it was the same game. In terms of the Giants, I thought the Giants would be kind of a sleeper ball control football team, great defensive line, a lot of sacks, and that was not the case. They played a tough Commanders team, but you put up 6 points on offense, you're averaging 2.1 yards per carry. Look, the offense looked anemic. Maybe you go to Jackson Dart and he boosts you up, possibly. I'm not sure that's going to happen. And Giants team, it just looked like luster. I was high on them, and I look to be wrong. Maybe they can turn it around. Maybe Jackson Dart gets a start in a couple of weeks, and they turn stuff around, but it doesn't look likely. Now, with the things I was wrong about out of the way, let's get into the things I was right about. And look, I'm going to take a big victory lap on this one. The Packers and Micah Parsons, I was slamming the table that the Packers would represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I was slamming the table that Micah Parsons would make a big impact. And he had one sack. It was kind of in garbage time. I don't really care about the counting stats per se. The Packers played the number one offense in the NFL in the Lions that averaged 33 points per game last year. Gave up 13 points. He had multiple guys get sacks. Micah Parsons is getting double teamed on every play. And they're going to eat. This is probably going to be one of the best pass rush units in the recent memory. You've got a very efficient offense with Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, all these talented weapons on the outside. Look, I think this team is going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I don't think anybody's all that close in terms of completeness, in terms of high-end talent. The Eagles, we know they can compete at the end of the day, but outside of the Eagles, I don't really see a team that is on the Packers level. Another two teams that I was right about is the Bengals defense. And look, I know they played the Browns. I know the Browns aren't a great team, but in the modern day of the NFL, when you are playing an experienced quarterback with some talent, you got Jerry Jeudy on the outside, giving up 16 points is an improvement. The Bengals defense of last year would have given up 24, 28, 31. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. And although I understand it's Joe Flacco, I understand the Browns aren't a great team, the Bengals defense regressed to the mean. That's what I was talking about all offseason. Look, if you've got the best offense and the worst defense, both will probably regress to some degree to the mean. Are they both going to be at 16th average? No. But the offense is not going to sustain that success, and the defense is going to sustain that anti-success. Falcons are another team. Look, I said this was going to be a very competent offense led by Michael Penix, and they proved that. They didn't get the win. They missed the kick. I understand that. This team, they've got their franchise quarterback in Michael Penix, and this offense, it's going to be electric. Now, one that you could go either way on is I said that the Kansas City Chiefs would lose more close games than they won this year. And look, it hasn't been proven yet. They're just 0-1 in close games, but they were dominant last year in close games. Dominant. And maybe because you've got Mahomes, maybe you've got Andy Reid, you're going to win 70% of those one-score games. Are you going to win 100% back-to-back years? I just find that unlikely, especially over such a big sample size. There's going to be, as I've mentioned with the Bengals defense, some regression to the mean. That's just how probability works. Look, it's not a coin flip because the athletes, they're talented, they're different talent levels, there's different situations, but it's unlikely something that is relatively close to a 50-50. It's probably going to end up near 50-50, especially when we average out last season's dominance. This season, I expect the Chiefs to lose more of those close games than they win, and that's what happened. Now, I'm going to give you a hot take. So we got out of the way what I was wrong about, what I was right about, and I've got a hot coaching take. Number one, before we get into my hot coaching take, Kevin O'Connell legitimately is probably the second most valuable asset to the Minnesota Vikings. It's Justin Jefferson is the most, but he might be the most valuable coach in the NFL, and I don't really think it's particularly close. You look at the good teams, the Nick Siriannis with the Eagles, the John Harbaugh with the Ravens, Sean McDermott with the Bills. Those guys are irrelevant. You could fire them, get a new coach. It doesn't matter. It legitimately doesn't matter. They're not doing anything innovative. They're not. What Kevin O'Connell's done with Sam Darnold, pedestrian, Kirk Cousins, pedestrian, J.J. McCarthy below pedestrian level, and somehow is always an efficient offense. I don't know how it's happening, but he's the second most valuable asset to that Minnesota Vikings franchise, and it's phenomenal. But aside from that, a little bit of a tangent there. If you have an elite quarterback, a top 8 quarterback, that tier 1 quarterback, and you have the option to ice the game on a 4th and 2, it was a long 2, it was probably a 4th and 3, you have the option to ice the game with your MVP quarterback on a play that has an above 50% rate of success, 4th and 3 conversion. And that doesn't even factor in how good your offense is, because 4th and 3 conversion, all they do is they look at every 4th and 3 ever, and it's 64%. That doesn't factor in how much better our offense is than the average offense. So if anything, it's more like 70%, 72%. If you're not going to go for it in that situation to ice the game, to end the game, you've got an MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson. You've got weapons. You've got Flowers. You've got Henry, who can help out as well, break a play open. If you're not willing to go for a 70% conversion rate with your MVP quarterback, you don't deserve to win a Super Bowl. It's that simple. If you are going to play conservative, if you are going to play to not get embarrassed or not look stupid, or, I don't want to have to answer to something uncommon. Look, at the end of the day, if you are going to compete with this era's Michael Jordan and Patrick Mahomes, you are going to have to take the game from them. You're going to have to take it from the Chiefs. You can't play conservative and hope they make that mistake. When you play scared, you get ran over by a Mack truck. And that's what happened. Look, regardless of the opposition being Josh Allen, which give him 2 minutes, no timeouts, all he needs to get in the field goal range, and he's got 4 downs. Look, I don't care what the analytics say. That's probably going to happen. When the Ravens punted the ball off to the Buffalo Bills, it was more likely than not that they converted that. So, from an analytical standpoint, we have a 4th and 3 conversion that is likely. It is more than 50%. Now, you can debate on specifically how much Lamar Jackson bumps it above the average, etc., etc. The game script, this game was very high scoring. I don't care. The 4th and 3, it was more likely to get it than not to get it. So, if the option was a coin flip or go for on 4th and 3, you go for on 4th and 3. That doesn't factor in, you're punting it to a quarterback that was just the MVP, that is electric with his arm and with his legs, against a defense that can't stop anything. So you go from a 70-30 proposition to a 30-70 proposition. That doesn't make any sense. Even if we get away the emotions of, you want to empower your quarterback, you want to go for it, you want to be aggressive, which is what I like if it's close. This situation was not close. The analytics are obvious. You give a quality quarterback. If this was the 2000 Ravens defense and we're punting, that's one thing. Because our defense is the strong suit. And although analytics might disagree, the defense is the strong suit. You punt to a crappy quarterback, you can stop him. You punt to Josh Allen, who gets 4 downs. When a team needs to get a field goal, it's a lot easier because instead of having 3 downs, you're going for it on 4th. So it changes the dynamic of the game. And the Ravens went from a 70-30 proposition where we've got the MVP quarterback to a 30-70 proposition where they have the MVP quarterback. And look, it's not conducive for being a dominant team that is going to be aggressive and take things. In this era, against Mahomes, and you're going to have to play Burrow and Allen and Jackson and all these elite quarterbacks in the AFC, if you're not willing to be risky, if you're not willing to be bold, you just can't get it done. Being bold doesn't guarantee a win, but it's your only chance. I'm not saying that the strategy of being aggressive and going for it, I'm not saying that everybody's guaranteed to win, because you're not. If both teams go for broke, one team will go broke. But if one team's going to be aggressive and you're going to be like, oh, I'm scared, you're going to get ran over. You're going to get ran over. And that's what happened. Unfortunately, that is what happened.